Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, predictfootball.blogspot.com. It's December 31st, 2010. We still have the last week of the regular season to play. There's no sport in the United States that garners more gambling excitement than the National Football League. I'm always up for a challenge. Here is how I see the NFL playoffs as of today. In the NFC, I believe there are only three teams that have a chance at winning the conference. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to sound tough here. I can sound tough because I don't own an NFL team, and I'm not a member of the mainstream media. In other words, I think you want a free press. You don't want a crony press, right? If you're going to listen to an analysis of the president, you don't want that analysis to come from someone who's trying to invite the president to dinner, right? In that vein, let's talk about the NFC. I believe there are only three teams that can win that conference. The three are, and keep in mind, we're just looking for truth. We don't care if we're with the public or against the public, right? The three teams, in my opinion, are the Green Bay Packers, who haven't yet qualified for the playoffs, but the Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Bears, and the New Orleans Saints. The three teams that I do not believe are going to win the NFC are the team that's likely to have home field through the playoffs, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. The media feel-good story, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the winner of the NFC West, whether that's the Rams or the Seattle Seahawks. In the AFC, and we'll get back to the NFC, in the AFC, three teams that I think have a reasonable chance of winning the conference are the team that will have home field advantage through the playoffs, and that's the New England Patriots, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and their nemesis in their division, the Baltimore Ravens. The teams I believe that'll be on the outside looking in, the New York Jets, Peyton Manning, and the Indianapolis Colts. And a team that, quite frankly, I've wrestled with. This is the one team that I'm a bit on the fence about, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now let's get back to the NFC. Let me first talk about the teams that I feel are on the outside looking in. The Philadelphia Eagles. You know, the Eagles are challenged defensively. They have problems on defense. Don't be blinded by all the speed on offense. Macklin, Jackson, Michael Vick, McCoy. Great young talent. But unfortunately, for half of the game, they're off the field. Right? I believe that the defense has issues. Asante Samuel, excellent corner. Unfortunately, there are other parts of that secondary. I don't believe that the Eagles have the defense to get to the upper level. Also, Michael Vick. You know what? There was a time this season where Vick hadn't thrown a pick. Well, why then does Vick have 6 picks right now? I think that Michael Vick, unfortunately, is regressing to the mean. He was having a phenomenal year. Now he's coming back to the pack. His accuracy isn't what it was earlier in the season. Let me also say, too, that they've been devastated by injuries. You saw Vick limping around. Deshaun Jackson isn't 100% healthy. I think that bodes poorly for them. That loss to Minnesota really hurt them because they could have had the 2 seed. They could have had the extra week of rest that, quite frankly, a dainty, fast team that's banged up needed to operate at full strength. They won't get that extra week of rest because they lost that game to the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Eagles, unfortunately for their fans, are overrated. I think they're going to have problems in the playoffs. Let's talk about Atlanta. Any time that you're hearing about how unbeatable a team is at home, and we know that's a myth because they just lost to New Orleans on national TV, but anytime you're hearing about how unbeatable the team is at home, you really have to wonder how they are on the road. Also, Matt Ryan, all I can say is, I don't buy this Matty Ice hype. It seems to be hype to me. Unfortunately, Matt Ryan is in a conference where there are quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, um, as competitors. I think Matt Ryan is a good quarterback, but I question whether he's a Drew Brees or an Aaron Rodgers. Also, with regard to the talent on the Atlanta Falcons, I think they're a well coached team. I think that coaching has hidden some deficiencies. Michael Turner is a burner. He's also a north to south runner. He's not a guy who can kick it outside like Adrian Peterson. I believe that in the playoffs, there are ways where you can stop north to south runners defensively. Also, Roddy White is a good wide receiver. I don't see the other receivers on that team. It seems to me to be an offense that just revolves around four players: Matt Ryan, Michael Turner, Tony Gonzalez, and Roddy White. So I'm not completely convinced on the Atlanta Falcons. As for the NFC West, you know what? I give the Rams all the credit in the world. Sam Bradford, certainly the rookie of the year. That's the problem, though. He's a rookie. Also, he's throwing to guys like Danny Amendola. I give Amendola a lot of credit. Unfortunately, there are other wide receivers in the conference, people like Greg Jennings, for example, who I feel are just more explosive. I don't think the Rams are old enough to compete with the upper tier in the conference. As for the Seattle Seahawks, all I can say is they have an under 500 record right now. I think people understand that that's a work in progress. Let's talk about the teams that I like in the NFC. Green Bay, 44 sacks, hellacious defense, right? Reigning defensive player of the year in Charles Woodson. You have other guys on that team who are kicking butt um, on offense. You're talking about, in my opinion, and hey, it's my video, I'm telling you my opinion. You're talking about the best quarterback in the National Football Conference. I believe the best in the conference is Aaron Rodgers. Chicago, let me just say this. The story to me is not Jay Cutler. I think Jay Cutler is one of the weaknesses on that team. Cutler throws too many picks for my liking. I believe the story is actually that defense. Julius Peppers, Brian Urlacher. That's a brick defense. I believe that's what's carrying the day. Let me also say, too, that Cutler is a different quarterback type than Kurt Warner. I believe Kurt Warner is a mathematical, analytical type. I believe when he was with Mike Martz, who's now the Bear offensive coordinator, Warner literally was able to kind of like learn that offense and deal with matchups. I believe Jay Cutler has gotten to the NFL on the strength of one of the best arms in football history, right? I believe when you have an athlete who's not a math guy with the nutty professor type, who is very analytical, in Mike Martz, I believe it takes a while for that athlete to figure out that the sport is actually a math-based sport. Jay Cutler's learning. He's much better now than he was in September. He's much better now than he was in October. Maybe Cutler's ready to hit that upper level. Also, New Orleans, let me just say this. They are the reigning champs. Speaking of nutty professor, Sean Payton is one of the best. Drew Brees is one of the best. My concerns with New Orleans is, you just heard me say Green Bay had 44 sacks. New Orleans only has 30 sacks. My concerns, too, is New Orleans is an indoor team. They might have to play some very difficult outdoor games. Also, their rushing, quite frankly, is anemic. So, nonetheless, out of respect for Drew Brees and Sean Payton, I believe New Orleans with the Bears and Green Bay has a chance to win the NFC. Let's talk about the AFC. Unfortunately, I only have 5 more minutes. The teams that I feel are pretenders in the AFC: Indianapolis, their defense terrible, their rushing game terrible. You're talking about a team that last year had home field in the playoffs, so they were able to get to the Super Bowl. This year they don't. Peyton Manning, for all the hype, has folded up like a cheap umbrella outdoors in the playoffs in the past. Kansas City, this team I have mixed feelings about. I concede that KC's on the cusp, but too much Dwayne Bowe. I believe that he's too big a part of their offense. I think that teams are going to, game plan for him. I also think that Matt Castle just simply too young at this stage. This was the hardest call, but I think KC's on the outside looking in. The Jets, I'll tell you what, when you get your ass kicked 45-3 in a game against a divisional rival, I'm not sure if you could be taken seriously. Too much man-to-man defense. It looks to me that guys like Bill Belichick know how to game plan a pick-type offense that can pick off Cromartie and Darrelle Revis. I also statistically have noticed that the Jet defense, for all the hype, is just not statistically as good as the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, all the Baltimore Raven defense. Also, Mark Sanchez, you know what? I'm a Pac-10 guy. Love the Pac-10. I remember Mark Sanchez at USC. Mark Sanchez cannot throw a deep ball with authority. At times, he gets flustered in the pockets and he lays up interceptions for the defense. I think Mark Sanchez is an iffy part of the Jet offensive attack. Now, let's talk about the teams on the inside in the AFC. New England, all I could say is this: Tom Brady is the gold standard in quarterbacks this year. We can have a conversation on whether he deserves the MVP. Just understand that Tom Brady just set the record for most passes without a pick. If you look at those games, Tom Brady's throwing the ball a hell of a lot in inclement conditions, and the guy still is not throwing the kind of picks that I just talked about Mark Sanchez throwing. Tom Brady, to me, is a difference maker. Now, that said, New England, shaky away from home. Fortunately, they're going to be at home throughout the playoffs, but they're shaky away from home. That tells me that defense is not as good as it should be. Pittsburgh, 44 sacks. The Pittsburgh defense is the truth. They're going to get Troy Polamalu back for the playoffs. The question I have for you is, how good is that offense really? I'm curious, looking at that Pittsburgh-Cleveland game that's coming up the last week of the season, exactly what offense takes the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There are questions. Also, certain gamers on that team, like Hines Ward, lack down the field speed. So Pittsburgh, they are a team with a legitimate chance, but again, I think that they were a little bit banged up. Hines Ward is a little bit long in the tooth. There are questions about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, the Baltimore Ravens, all I can say is, I remember Ronnie Lott at the end of his career. He knew how to play safety. He just didn't have the wheels to, do it at the level he was accustomed. That's what it feels like when I'm watching Ed Reed out there. Also, Ray Lewis, I know he just made the Pro Bowl. If you were to put a young Ray Lewis out of Miami up against current Ray Lewis, we would be shocked at how much faster and how much more field the younger Ray Lewis covered. Ray Lewis, bigger reputation than talent right now. Baltimore Ravens, when you give the keys of the car to Joe Flacco and he's throwing for less than 200 yards in some games, there is cause for concern. But that defense is so hellacious that keep in mind too, if the Steelers lose to the Cleveland Browns, who are underrated, then Baltimore would actually win that division. Baltimore had New England on the rope, should have beaten New England in New England, gave that game away. I have Baltimore as one of the three teams that I think have a chance to win the AFC. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. Visit us at predictfootball.blogspot.com. And don't be shy. I know I have Philly, Atlanta, the NFC West, Indy, KC, and the Jets on the outside. Tell me if I'm wrong. Thanks for watching.